And welcome, Hoosier Nation, to our 165th episode, an emergency one of the Hoosier Sound, where we are the official podcast of Indiana HQ. Our mission and goal is simple. We want to bring in-depth analysis and coverage for Indiana University sports across a multitude of modern platforms. We are recording this edition of the Hoosier Sound on Sunday, October 25th, 2020, where I am your host, Nathan Krishnan. Here with me tonight are the big three, the two others. Noah's back, as well as Matt Lukens. Noah, I'm going to start with you. I know for sure you watched the entire game yesterday as Indiana knocked off number 8 Penn State. What are your thoughts on how that game went, and how's life going in general?
It's good. Thanks. It's great to be back. Thank you guys for having me for the emergency podcast on this. We're recording on a Sunday morning, which is not typically the time that we record on a podcast, but it definitely warrants the first time in at least the three of our lifetimes that Indiana football has knocked off a top 10 opponent, which is sad to say. I was watching the Michigan-Minnesota game, and they were kind of after we're basking in our glory of knocking off that 42-game losing streak to top 10 opponents, and they put up like the Aflac question of the game or something, and it was like, what was the most lopsided affair that has like 40 plus meetings in the past like 40 or 50 years or something like that? And it was, of course, Ohio State, Indiana, that Indiana has only won twice and tied once out of the last like 40 to 50 appearances or something like that. I'm like, oh, come on now, we just beat Penn State. But we're going to get into the details of it, but it's honestly just the lack of words that you're hearing from me is kind of the reaction that we're still having, even 12 hours after the game is still over, and we've had a full night, at least a night's sleep on it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we're all still processing the ending to that game, especially as IU won 36-35. Matt, same question to you. How's life? How are you breaking down this game, and what are your thoughts on just how the whole thing went down?
I think I've eaten like half a bottle of Tums in the last 24 hours. Like the stomach pain that IU was causing. It was like out of stress, because like if we don't go up, we're gonna go through the game. I think drive by drive, Noah was talking about before we started the podcast, but. I think we went up, was it 17-7?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm thinking, here it goes. Like, offense is going to get together. We're going to roll this. And then as the second half progressed, I went, I've seen the script before. Somebody has handed it to me multiple times, and I've told them that it sucks, and yet somehow it keeps appearing on my desk. And so I was just so stressed, but I am so happy for everyone involved with the program. They deserve it. This feels like the inverse of what we were talking about at the end of last year with the Tennessee game, where we gave the game away. Now it's us being given the game, so everything comes full circle, and I can't wait to hear you guys' thoughts on this game.
Oh, I mean, it was look, just think about the last 3 games Indiana's played, right? The bucket game against Purdue, and then the bowl game against Tennessee, and the season opener here against the Nittany Lions. I occasionally like to read
very spaced out games.
Yeah. I know.
November, January, and then October.
Oh my God, that's so true. Yeah, and then fortunately, Indiana's got another one coming up on Saturday here. I enjoy reading these random messages on Twitter or these random things I see on different websites where certain reporters talk about the alternate story they were going to write if the result was different. Had Kentucky beaten Indiana that day, that Christian Watford hit the buzzer beater. And just so our listeners know, my first line of the article of the recap of the game had Indiana lost was just going to be, welcome to the most recent episode of Indiana's frustrating losses. And of course, that was completely dumped into the trash can, and things were a lot more exciting. So, well,
we're so glad that your season finale of terrible Indiana losses was spoiled.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the script got thrown into that trash can, to say the least. So, what we're gonna do for all of you here today is just go kind of drive by drive, talk to you guys about what we were thinking at various points throughout the game, building up sort of to the end, where we're going to talk a ton about the various reviews that took place at the end, the various decisions that Tom Allen made at the end of the game, going for two, Michael Penix's now certainly immortalized dive to the pylon, all sorts of things. We're going to slowly build up to that as we get to the conclusion. So Noah, first drive of the game, Penn State took the ball and just drove it down Indiana's throat. 7 minutes, ended with Sean Clifford throwing a touchdown pass to his big tight end, Pat Freiermuth. Inauspicious start, to say the least, wasn't it?
Oh, for sure. I mean, it was the beginning of the game, the first, what would that have been? Basically the first quarter, almost the entire first quarter. Actually, it was more than just the first quarter, was extremely frustrating for being a Hoosier fan. It was kind of back into, all right, this Hoosier team is back to their old typical ways, and this is going to be a rough game, and then this is going to be a rough season, and all of the hype that we've had building since even going up to the Gator Bowl, which it was all going to be for nothing, basically, and we waited so long to have this, and blah, 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 but then, I mean, you've got Noah Cain before he even gets injured, and then having Devin Ford, third-string running back for this Penn State team, just running all over this Hoosier defensive line and linebackers. It was annoying to watch run after run after run, because I think in this drive, he only Sean Clifford, out of their 13 plays, only threw it like twice, and it was just all runs between the running backs and Sean Clifford himself before they ended up going down and scoring. And it was just a frustrating thing, especially I've got my Steelers jersey under this that I'm not going to be ashamed to talk about, that being the top defense in rushing. I was confused. I'm like, wait, a team can run more than 5 yards? I forgot that a team can run more than 5 yards watching the opposing defense, but it was definitely a frustrating first drive overall, and it didn't stop there for the defense and the offense.
Well, and to think, like a 7-minute drive, 13 plays, it gave you a bad taste in your mouth, especially because the touchdown came on 4th and goal down there at the 3-yard line. So the 2-yard line. So yeah, Matt, I mean, going into Indiana's second drive here, of course, Indiana's first drive, the second drive of the game. Mm-hmm. What were you hoping to see on the first drive, and then how upset were you that they went 3 and out?
I wanted to see some like a first down. I wanted to see them get a couple plays together and get Penix in some rhythm. Like, that's all I wanted. Like, I didn't ask for much, and they went 3 and out and looked awful. Penix was high on everything. I'm pretty sure he overthrew. I don't want to say WAP. It wasn't like a post pattern. It was wide open, just completely overthrew him. And I'm sitting there, and I just turned to my family, and I was like, this is over. Like if they're going to be playing like this, the way that Penix is throwing the ball, he wasn't getting time to throw. The wide receivers weren't running the right patterns. We ran the ball, I think, on first down and second down for a total of like 1 yard. And I was like, this is, here's Penn State. Sack. Right. Yeah. Here's the Penn State that we all know, like, they're going to, stop the run. We're going to try to run it down the middle for some reason, every single time. And we're not going to give Penix the ball. And here we go. Like, this is going to be a loss. And so that was my thought after the first time we had the ball.
Yeah. Yeah. 3 and out. 3 and out. And then on that third down, in case those of you may not remember, on that third down, Joey Porter Jr. came off the blind side and just whacked Penix for a big sack. And at that point, I was a little concerned Porter was going to punch that ball out or something, because Penix had just didn't see him, and the protection broke down. The corner came completely untouched.
The tackles, to say the least, the tackle switch that was made in the offseason with Bedford and Jones, the anchor of this offensive line, definitely did not work in game 1, to say the least.
No,
I know it's their first game back, but it was that. It just kept getting worse the whole game.
A brutal matchup too. I mean, you're not going to face another team on your schedule with the pass rushers of Shaka Toney and Jason Owe, and we didn't really hear Owe's name too much. But we did hear Tony's name at the end of the game. So Indiana went 3-and-out. Penn State responded with a 3-and-out. I don't think there's much to go into there. Indiana had another one. And then the really big swing in the game happened at the end of the first quarter, where Penn State was moving towards midfield. And then on a screen pass, Sean Clifford lofted a ball intended for Devin Ford way over his running back's head into the hand of Jalen Williams. I'm going to ask this question to both of you. We'll start with Noah. The takeaways on the defensive side, especially from some guys who may not have expected, people like Jalen Williams, that was a very encouraging sign. Easily the brightest thing to see in a first quarter that was really rough for IU.
I could take it first. Yeah. The defense won the game. The defense at the end of the first quarter and the second quarter were the reasons why the Hoosiers ended up winning this game, because they wouldn't have had the points total at the end of the fourth quarter to even have a chance to come back. If we're talking about some of these drives where the Penn State with their first interception just now, they were going on another long drive. It was a 3+ minute drive with 6 plays, and they were going to continue to go down the field, I think, because the defense wasn't stopping them. Otherwise, it was just taking the ball away, and then that another interception and a fumble later was the defense. Basically, the defense scored that, although they didn't directly score 2 touchdowns right here, where after IU kicks this field goal, the next 2 touchdowns basically come from the defense giving them the points. The defense scored basically 10 to 14 points, which is the reason why the Hoosiers were in the game at the end, and they had the chance to basically come back with some good coaching or some bad execution from the Penn State side.
Yeah, and when we're talking about after the 3-and-out for Penn State, and then there's a 3-and-out for IU.
Yep.
What we're missing before the interception is the weird, at the 4-minute mark, the weird illegal touching call on the muffed punt. This is what we're missing. This is important context in this game. Is the weird officiating of this game.
Stinky officiating. Stinky.
Again, in my life, I have watched thousands of hours of football. I have never seen this call be called on a muffed punt. Like, we're talking like it's a live ball. So isn't that just a different play from then the punt? Because then once it's touched by the receiving team, it's a fumble. So therefore it's a live ball. Yeah. It's a live ball. But they call it illegal touching, but they muff the... I don't understand. Anyway,
even with that logic, I was trying to think, all right, I'm going to go along with this logic and continue down their thought process, how they touched about illegal touching and how he didn't come back into bounds. Again, they called it IU ball first, so there has to be overwhelming evidence to overturn it, which is the first big red flag, even if you go past the live ball craziness. And you could also argue that he reestablished himself when his knee touched the ground and then he got the ball. He went out of bounds, he put his knee down, which is an establishment back into the field of play, and then he got the ball, which is also, the timeline is so skewed because you can't see when he actually touched the ball itself when he gained possession. Like, all of it was there's just too many question marks to be like, you really just overturned that. But I will take all of it leading up to, even if all of because a lot of the national media is kind of saying that very last play shouldn't have happened in the Hoosiers' favor. I will still take all of it leading up to, if it comes back for karma coming back Indiana's way for the first time in literally decades, the end result is still good.
Yeah.
By the way, the national media taking the side of that the last play should have gone the other way is such a cop-out. It's such a cop-out because nobody can pick on them for being wrong because it's such a close play. Like, oh, the refs got it wrong, which is such an easy position to take on almost anything. Because if you just blame the refs, everybody's like, yeah, we hate the establishment. Refs suck. I hate those zebras. And so that's essentially what the national media is taking on this call. And the refs actually called it right on the field. As you see, if somebody dives to the pylon, you give the pylon falls over, you give them the benefit of the doubt, and then you go into replay and try to fix it. And there's no evidence otherwise to show it. We will talk about this more I'm getting worked up already.
No, it's good. It's good. And it's important because the one thing I learned, or at least the one thing that stood out to me yesterday, is that even in 2020, where I guess in college football, we're reviewing everything now, from muff punts to ball hitting the ground and all sorts of things. I mean, in the first quarter, there must have been 3 or 4 reviews. And I was... Gosh. And
those reviews took forever.
And I was getting annoyed, and you can tell by the snark on the Indiana HQ Twitter account. I was getting frustrated just from the amount of time the reviews took. But to get to my point, even with all the reviews in the world, the call on the field makes a difference. Even today, what do they say? What do the referees say when they watch it live? That's something where I know every time they review it, there are going to definitely still be some overturns of the original call, but the call on the field matters a lot. And so when you watch these games going forward, pay attention to what the officials say in the beginning when the play happens, because a lot of times, as you saw at the end of the game especially, that's going to make all the difference in the world. So after the Jalen Williams interception, where he returned it into Penn State territory, right, the Hoosiers couldn't get it into the end zone, but Charlie Campbell knocked through a 34-yard field goal. And I think Campbell's one of the underrated storylines of the game. Not only was he perfect on the afternoon, he vastly outperformed Penn State's veteran kicker, Matt. Having a good kicker, that's pretty exciting for Indiana football. It could make a big difference.
Yeah, again, we talked about this thing on the podcast last week. Charlie Campbell's a former Army All-American kicker. Charlie Campbell's like a very, very, very promising young kicker. We are looking at a potential NFL kicker on our team in Charlie Campbell. And we're pretty much set for the next 2, 3, 4 years at the kicking position now with Charlie Campbell in there. And look at the foundations of this Hoosier program. It's all young players. You're looking across the board. We're going to talk about the playmakers in this game, but they're all sophomores and juniors. Penix is a sophomore. On the defensive end, I know his name is just jumped at Micah McFadden. Sorry. Micah McFadden was making plays all over the field. He's a junior. Mm-hmm. Like, you're looking up and down this team. These are young players making these plays.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what's exciting more than anything for Indiana fans going forward. Yeah, this is a drive. At this point, Penn State didn't have Noah Kane. He exited the game with an injury. Shaka Toney was banged up a little bit, but Campbell knocks through the field goal and cuts the Indiana deficit from 7-0 to 7-3.
Without looking at anything else, would you guys have thought that this field goal, would you have thought that this was the longest in terms of plays and time that the Hoosiers did, or would you think it would have been like up there? Do you think this was the longest drive that they had?
Definitely would not have thought it was the longest drive.
It's the longest drive. The Hoosiers offense only put together 9 plays as the most, and this one was for 3 minutes and 15 seconds. The only other time that they put together a 9-play drive was another field goal in the second half, where it was for only 1 minute and 42 seconds. And this only had a 22 yards. That they only went 22 yards with 9 plays. It was
the time of possession. Was a stat that I don't think is going to end up reflecting too well on Indiana. I think Penn State ended up winning that one something like 42-18 in the 60 minutes of regulation, of course, in overtime. Things the game clock no longer exists. But so we're midway through the second quarter at this point, and Indiana's trailing 7-3. If you ask me personally how I was feeling here, okay, there's still a lot of time left, but I felt like Indiana at this point was sort of over their initial struggle. It felt like both teams settled into the game. It felt like you're going to get a physical, sort of classic Big Ten East matchup. Over the last few years, Indiana and Penn State have played a lot of close games. I had the same feeling that you had, Matt. Early on, I was like, oh, God, it looks like Penn State's going to run away with this. Obviously, at this point, when you're at 7-3, the teams are exchanging some 3-and-outs. Sean Clifford's unable to throw the ball accurately. Good things seem to be happening. So we're going to fast forward a little bit here to a Reese Taylor punt return, where he makes another big special teams play for Indiana. Again, Penn State has a really good special teams unit, yet that was really one of the big differences in the game, you asked me. Even something as little as Reese Taylor returning the ball 21 yards into Penn State territory, and then the Hoosiers punch it into the end zone. Stevie Scott, old reliable in the backfield. Again, as Matt was saying, a junior, not a senior. A junior carries the ball, trucks a defender over at the 2-yard line, and scores from 14 yards out. And Noah, at this point, Indiana's got their first lead of the game. It's 10-7.
I mean, the unsung heroes, you're right. When you think about it, I never stopped to take a step back and think about which side of the ball actually won probably the whole game, because the offense definitely didn't win the whole game, minus basically the last 2 minutes of maybe not even the last 2 minutes of the entire game, and then overtime. Excluding that, the defense, besides basically quarter two, they didn't have the best game, because Penn State just kept driving at basically, it felt like at will for the majority of the game. And really, the side of the ball that didn't make, I don't even think they made a mistake at all, was, besides the very end of the game. There was one thing, literally besides one mistake, period. Special teams was on top of it. And without the way special teams played, I don't think the Hoosiers end up coming away with this victory, because like you said, this is after special teams should have gotten that the ball on the Penn State, roughly, I think it was like the 35-yard line. And then despite that, the Hoosiers come back with the basically a 3-and-out, but 4 plays for Penn State. And then, like you said, Nathan, Stevie Scott returns it for 21 plus yards, gives the Hoosiers good field position for what they've had. And then they get to score their first touchdown of the season on the legs of Samson James and Stevie Scott, because Michael Penix could not get his passing game going for most of the game. And it like you said, I was feeling relatively okay. I was like, all right, I think Indiana's going to be within the game for the rest of the way, unlike the first quarter where it was like, I think Penn State might run away with it.
Yeah, and Matt, I mean, at this point, Indiana's got the lead. Stevie Scott's feeling himself a little bit, running defenders over. Are you still feeling good about Indiana's chances here now that they've overcome some struggles, or because you were saying earlier, like, oh, we're doomed. What are your thoughts here as we're about halfway through the second quarter?
I mean, we just had a 6-play, 62-yard drive in 2 minutes. I'm sitting here thinking, oh, offense is back online. Here we go. This is the Penn State secondary that we were expecting that can't cover anybody. We're getting some push now in the offensive line against this really good Penn State run defense, and Stevie's getting it going. Like, this could be one of those games where IU cements itself as a front runner in the Big Ten.
Yeah, here we go. I mean, it's unbelievable the kind of big pendulum swings I think all Hoosier fans were dealing with during that game. It went from, wow, we're screwed, or we're terrible, to, oh, we're feeling good, we're making the playoff. And and then it kept swinging back and forth over the course of the 3.5-4 hours yesterday afternoon. In the second quarter, actually, Indiana outgained Penn State 77-75 in the yardage department, and that was not the case in the other 3 quarters, a game where Penn State outgained Indiana by something like 250 yards. But Sean Clifford continued to give Indiana some early Christmas presents. He decided on a third down pass to Pat Fryermuth that he was going to overthrow him by 10 yards, and Jamar Johnson intercepted it. And right after that, Stevie Scott ran it into the end zone. Noah, let's talk a little bit about Jamar Johnson. Let's talk about a little bit about Indiana having a 10-point lead at this stage in the game.
Now, this is more the secondary in general, because props to Johnson himself and Williams earlier for the interception, this is kind of a secondary. There wasn't one specific member of the secondary that was just lights out, basically controlling the defense. It was the whole secondary for the majority of the game. When you take out basically Penn State, especially in the middle to the end of the third quarter, where they were just on the field almost the entire time, and you look at the time of possession, just the defense was on the field for way too long. So you take out some of the gas stuff. The secondary had a really good game, and I haven't obviously been on the podcast recently to talk about it, especially after Marcelino Ball went down. I never thought for even a second that his injury, and this is not anything against him, this is more for the amount of depth that this Hoosier defense in the secondaries had. I was never worried about Marcelino Ball's injury. And you think about that for a second, the kind of player he is, the leader he is on the field. I think we're going to miss his leadership on the field itself more than any of his plays, because this is what we saw. Again, Clifford did pretty bad QBing, especially, I mean, it is the first game, it's been a while, but still the secondary took advantage of it. And this is the secondary as a whole, even though Johnson and Williams, the guys that technically got the interceptions, didn't replace Marcelino Ball itself. This just kind of goes to show the depth that they have and the kind of number of players that they've got running around on the entire field, and just having at least the wherewithal to be a ball hawk and find that ball, because honestly, sometimes it's harder to even find those balls when it gets overthrown, when it's nowhere near a receiver, because usually it's a cornerback on a receiver and they just get the better of him. It's sometimes it's harder to find where the ball is basically seemingly randomly thrown on the field and they get to find it and take it back.
Yeah, I mean, that's what stood out to me there. A lot of times they say the toughest interceptions are the ones that are thrown straight at you, and Clifford lofted that ball right into the hands of Jamar Johnson. Matt, at this stage, you know, even now that we know how the game ended, you know, we're talking about how defense and special teams helped Indiana win. If you're looking for someone to shoulder the blame for Penn State, is it too harsh to put all of it on Sean Clifford? Because even though he was mobile on the ground, he was really struggling in the passing game yesterday.
I mean, if you're going to put it on a player, you put it on Sean Clifford. But if I had to put it on anybody, it's going to be on the head coach and Mr. James Franklin. Look, we'll get to the late game decision making. You know, we ad nauseum talked about Tom Allen's lack of late game decision making prowess, and now we're going to talk about James Franklin, who has a history of blowing games like this, sadly for Penn State fans. But no, if you're going to talk about a player, yeah, Sean Clifford played the worst, and I think this is something that IU fans are missing out on. Our offense played awful. And we're going to talk about this in the second half. They played awful. Penix did not have a good game until the last, let's say, 4 minutes of the game. Penix was terrible. The offensive line was terrible. Stevie Scott was okay. The wide receivers couldn't get open. Play calling was atrocious across the board. But I use, to the offense's credit, Penn State's defense played lights out. This is the best I've seen Penn State's defense play. Their defensive line was getting pushed on nearly every single play. Their linebackers were flying around the field making plays, and their secondary was their coverage was so good. I don't remember a wide receiver other than Watt drop or Penix missing Watt on the post route that one time that a wide receiver was open by 2 yards or more. Like there was no separation at all for the wide receivers, and we'll talk about that last drive when we get to it, and the throws Penix had to make to get to wide receivers. But this Penn State team, everybody played well and up to how they can play, except for Sean Clifford. So if you want to put it on a player, you want to put the blame on a player, you can put it on Sean Clifford. Yeah. I'm fine with that, but the blame has to go on James Franklin here. Yeah,
no, I like that, and it leads right into a big play close to halftime where, you know, we're not going to dive into it too much, but Franklin, for some reason, inserts his sort of package QB, his Tebow-style QB, Will Levis, into the game, and Levis got the ball punched out of Jamar Johnson super easy, and Jerome Johnson picked it up, and Indiana thwarted another long Penn State drive.
Great game.
He did. Both Johnsons, Jerome and Jamar. I thought Jamar did a good job clogging up the middle along with CO to slow down Penn State's run game outside of Clifford, the quarterback, scrambling. Big play at the end of the first half, though, and this is the one where I think Indiana fans would have had a little indigestion going into the halftime break, where Stevie Scott had the ball knocked out of his grasp. A lot of things to talk about on that play. There's really 3 different aspects of the thing we can talk about. First of all, Indiana was running out the clock there as they were just waiting to halftime. A little surprised Tom Allen just didn't call for a kneel. The second thing is of course, Stevie Scott, surprised that he fumbled the football. He's not much of a fumbler as it is. You would have liked him to protect the ball a little bit more. But then the third aspect of it, and we talked about the officiating, if you're going to have a targeting rule in place, that's the exact type of thing you're trying to weed out of the game. But I guess, hey, maybe if you're a Penn State player, you just don't get those called. And I know they did hit one guy for targeting in the second half, but that was, I thought, a textbook definition. They didn't call it.
Yeah. You want to talk about decision making and crunch time decision making, important late quarter half decision making from Tom Allen? That's bad decision making. You need to kneel there. And like Nathan said, that's targeting. Like clear as day, that's targeting. I don't even blame Stevie for fumbling the ball. He just took a 250-pound man with his helmet like a missile to the back of his head when he's going down. That's targeting. That's a defenseless player that's somebody using the crown of their helmet to attack the back of the head of a defenseless player. That is officially targeting, and you cannot tell me otherwise. That's in the NFL. That's called. If that's against a Penn State player, by an IU player, that's called. That's targeting every single time. And that's not only that. That is a first down. That's a first down for the Hoosiers there, and I just find it absolutely absurd. Yeah. That was not called. There wasn't even a review for it. There was you throw the flag if you think that there's a possible flag. You throw the flag. You pick it up if there's not a flag. That's it. That's the end of the discussion. Blasphemy. Blasphemy.
And to me, it's becoming a trend. It's becoming a pattern for Penn State that I hope the Big Ten office fixes at some point. Sends them a strongly worded memo, if not something more, because we're seeing this becoming a habit for their defenders, leaning in with the helmet, using that as a weapon on defense. It's got to stop, and I don't know when it's going to stop, but they face Ohio State next week, and I'm expecting we're going to see a lot of the same thing.
Real quick, as we get out of the first half, you talked about Stevie Scott's fumbles, and it got me thinking real quick, and I had to actually look it up multiple times. How many times do you think Stevie Scott has fumbled in his career at IU?
I have not looked this up. I have no clue. I'm going to say one. I just don't remember many times the ball getting knocked out of his hands. Of course, I'm going to look really stupid if the answer is like 8, but I think it's 1.
I think it's like twice, and both of them have been in late, like half or like late time. Like
yesterday was the first one.
What?
That's incredible.
First career fumble at Indiana. I had to check it multiple times because I didn't believe it when I saw 2018-0, 2019-0. This is his first career fumble with Indiana.
I could have
lost fumble. I'd say lost fumble.
I could have sworn he's like almost.
He probably did get a fumble, but IU didn't lose it. But that's his first lost fumble at Indiana.
Yeah. And like Matt said, apparently it took someone, a linebacker, Ellis Brooks, to target him with his helmet. But of course, I guess they didn't call it. Penn State's kicker missed a 25-yarder at the end of halftime. Anyway, ball don't lie. We move to the third quarter.
That, by the way, that is the most.
Double,
oh my god, that was the most vivid like sound of a doink I've ever heard in my life. It was like a doink and a bonk put together. That was the sound.
Oh, but a doink and a boink, I guess, is what that would be. Well, I remember there was a game where Cody Parkey hit the upright, I think 4 times in the same game against Detroit, and all the radio stations in Chicago like spliced those four doinks together, and it was just every time I heard that 2-second audio, I just absolutely died. So Indiana starts the third quarter with the football, and I think at this point we're saying, hey, 17-7, can the Hoosiers create some breathing room? Hey, the offense has struggled. They put up barely 70 or 80 yards in that first half. Can they go out and really put a drive together? Maybe Nick Sheridan, the new offensive coordinator, makes some adjustments. But Matt, a lot of times that you tip your cap to the Penn State defense. They played really well, and the Hoosiers had to punt once again to start the third quarter.
Yeah, 6 plays and a punt. Just kind of annoying, honestly, because I thought Penix got it going. He started off. Stevie runs for 2 yards, and then Penix completes to Miles Marshalls for 13 yards. And I go, okay, here we go. Here's a drive. We're starting to get a first down. Then Stevie Scott runs for 1 yard, and then the play gets blown up on 2nd and 9 for a -5 yards, and then Penix has no one open except for Miles Marshall in the flat for 2 yards, and that's it. That's the play call. Nobody was open on that play. Penix had nowhere to go on 3rd and 14 from the 36. At least try to give him some time to throw, give him some time to maybe find a wide receiver that, as Penix uses his legs to prolong the play, maybe they can find him in the flat, or downfield running across the middle of the field for a 10, 15-yard gain to even get close to the first down marker. Nothing. There was nothing. The play calling in this game was atrocious. I want to highlight it because, again, Nick Sheridan's a new offensive coordinator for us. There's a lot of people calling for, they wanted Kalen DeBoer back. He's not coming back. He's head coach for Fresno. Sorry. He's getting paid a lot of money to be a head coach. That's what he wants to be doing. But when you looked across college football, there was a lot of new offensive coordinators putting their mark on their games, and we did not see anything remotely decent from Nick Sheridan until late in the fourth quarter, when they finally let Penix loose. I just felt like they didn't let Penix run. They didn't let him use his legs, which is obviously one of his biggest weapons. He looked flat. He looked like he hadn't played in more than a year, which is also true. But you had to give Penix some easy throws to begin with, and there was nothing easy for Penix. Again, that's play calling, and then also credit to the defense, because the defense, the coverage was just they
locked.
They locked them in. There was no space.
Right. Yeah. Locked tight, solid coverage, press coverage across the board. Noah, let's talk about this first Penn State drive of the second half. I mean, we're here talking about maybe some offensive adjustments. It looked like Penn State made a few as they launched a 15-play drive, 54 yards. But hey, what do they say? Field goals get you fired. Missed field goals get you fired faster. Jake Pinniger missed another one from 47. He missed another one from 47 here. Somehow Penn State put together back-to-back drives spanning the first half and the second half of double-digit plays, and they ended with 0 points out of it.
This was kind of good and bad for Indiana, obviously the good because Penn State should have scored. But it was kind of the start of the decline for Indiana that you could tell, because the defense was what was holding up this game so far. And kind of going back to Matt talking about the offense, it was a lot. Obviously, Penix prided himself the last couple of years when he was playing on efficiency, and Penix was anything but efficient. And like you said, none of the receivers were open, and just none of the offense was working. So the defense had to literally win and get 17 points on the board at this point. And even though Penn State still had 15 plays for basically an 8-minute drive, it was that was just the beginning where I'm like, all right, the defense is on the field for way too long, because you see basically 8 minutes, the next drive, 4 minutes, the next drive, 4 minutes, the next drive, 3 minutes. Even though some of these didn't result in points for Penn State, it's just racking up, because right after this missed field goal, the Penix throws an interception right away. So the defense comes back right away. And basically that's an 11-minute drive that the defense was on there. And even though out of 11 minutes, 2 drives, this defense only gave Penn State 7 points, it was still kind of the beginning of the decline, just because, I mean, can you fault the defense for honestly giving some points in the third and fourth quarter? Because they would have been, even with the depth that they've started to build up, it just the offensive miscues and the offensive, just the lack of, they didn't have it together. Unlike that one drive in the first half, it was just really eating away at the defense that was going to end up potentially killing them at the end, which is what we all thought when it came down to the last 2 minutes of the game.
Yeah. The interception that Michael Penix throws here is probably the worst throw I've seen Penix make in IU uniform. Mm-hmm. He just flat out misses everybody and throws it to the other team. Like it wasn't even close. It was a bad decision to throw it in that spot. And again, I want to say that the reason why he throws that interception is because he's not in rhythm. He's like forcing the ball. he looked extremely rusty. And again, that's up to a play caller to understand and a former quarterbacks coach for Penix to look at his guy and go, all right, he's not feeling it today. He is not 100% right now. We need to ease him into this game. There was no easing at all.
Especially with Coach made a great comment just to remind me again, which is even if you take out the bad throws, because he hit some of his receivers. They were really awkward positions for some of them, but like later Peyton Hendershot just missed, even though the ref was in the way, just missed it. I think Watt missed another like they still hit his hands, even though it was awkward positions off the ground, tough catches. These are still the standards that now we need to have for this Indiana football team, that, hey, if you want to be a good football team, it doesn't matter if it's a poorly thrown ball. If it gets anywhere near your hands, you need to catch the hand. So the receivers also weren't doing any favors for Penix, even if he didn't have one good throw to any receiver the entire game.
Yeah, it's true. And you're talking about that. I remember Freiermuth, the Penn State tight end, had a catch where the ball was tipped up in the air and he had to corral it with one hand. That's the type of stuff exactly that you're talking about. The nightmare third quarter ended with Sean Clifford navigating through about 7 of the 11 IU defenders on the field for a 35-yard touchdown. Clifford had an exceptional game carrying the football. He was great at scrambling. He had 119 yards rushing. It's a career high for him in that department. It was only on 7. The 119 rush yards came on 17 carries for the Penn State quarterback. So after 3, Indiana held a 17-14 lead on the number 8 team in the country. Hoosier fans still probably feeling good about just staying in front at this point. The third quarter stats, though, were an absolute nightmare. Penn State outgained Indiana 151-13 in the third quarter, and that was a period that started with Indiana having the football. So that's a bit of a rough situation there. And hey, those of you at home, you had more rushing yards than Indiana did in that third quarter. IU had -2 on the ground, put together 15 through the air. Yards per play, 7-2 in favor of the Nittany Lions. But after all that, we're still talking about Indiana holding a 17-14 lead. And hey, the Hoosiers punted. The Hoosiers actually ended up scoring a touchdown on this first drive of the fourth quarter. A field goal on the first drive of this fourth quarter. Woo! Got to get it together. Clearly, I'm still delirious from yesterday. The Hoosiers got a field goal on the first drive of this fourth quarter, but the big play that happened here was Penn State linebacker Jesse Luketa getting thrown out of the game for targeting. We finally saw it happen, Matt. And as I said, the Hoosiers went down, kicked a field goal. Charlie Campbell from 48, a long ball that barely left the ground. It was a straight line drive. What are your thoughts, Matt, on the targeting call and then Charlie Campbell delivering again?
Again, targeting call. Good call. It's the correct call. It was the obvious call.
It's the textbook. It's the easiest call. There are a lot of tough, ambiguous 50-50 targeting calls where the guy gets thrown out of the game. The 2 that we saw in this game were blatantly clear.
Yes, they were. I also thought there might have been a third one later in the game on one, but I think that one was fine. I think he beats with the crown or something, whatever. But yeah, no, that was obviously a textbook targeting call. Thank you. I called it. Mike Pereira in Los Angeles on the Fox broadcast called it. By the way, I think Pereira did a great job yesterday on the broadcast. On the other hand, Mark Helfrich, not so much. Could not get a name correct. It was annoying. You could have swapped both of them, and I would have just taken the referee angle the entire game. I don't even care. Helfrich was awful. But yeah, no. And we're talking about this drive. It's 9 plays, 44 yards, 3 completions, 5 incompletions from Penix. 5. Yeah. To end the drive, we have a pass incomplete on 1st and 10. Then there's a false start. So now it's 1st and 15. Then incomplete to Watt. Then incomplete to Hewitt. And then we have to settle for a field goal. Penix has to complete one of those passes. And all of them were either high or he put them in a very weird position for his wide receiver to catch it. Yes, no, I get your point about the wide receivers need to catch it if it's close to them. I don't care. Penix needs to be better than what he was yesterday. And he did not give his receivers a lot of help at all. And the unsung hero for this whole game for the IU offense is Miles Marshall. Miles Marshall had a great game, especially stepping up since we didn't have who was missing for this game?
David Ellis was
missing for the game, and he stepped up into the spot. Next man up mentality for this team, and played very well and made some clutch catches, especially holding on to that ball, even though he had a targeting penalty. That was especially important. So good job, Miles Marshall, and this team found a way to win, and we'll talk about it in a minute. But I wanted more out of this drive. I feel like they had more, and Penix could have found a couple of plays that were needed.
Yeah, it felt like there were a lot of unfulfilling drives in that fourth quarter. We're going to get into some of them here in a moment. But, Penn State got the ball back, moved on the field a little bit, but they couldn't convert it into points. There was a ensuing drive where Indiana had the opportunity to once again create some breathing room between them and the Nittany Lions. I remember tweeting out at this point in the game, hey, any points matters. It's 20-14. If you can even get a field goal, it becomes a 2-score game. And Charlie Campbell was feeling himself, of course. So if you could even get to maybe the 30 or the 35 at Penn State, give him a shot, you're feeling pretty good. But Stevie Scott unsuccessful runs to start the drive on first and second down. Penix incomplete to Freifogel on 3rd and 6. So the Nittany Lions got the ball back, and this is another interesting part of the game. Another drive where Penn State puts together a few plays, 6-play drive, 27 yards, moving down the field, but then on 4th and 1, Kayvon Lee, who got a number of carries yesterday because of Journey Brown's injury and Noah Kane missing, Lee gets stuffed on 4th and 1 by Cam Jones. Noah, at this stage, with 5 minutes to go, were you starting to did it start hitting you that Indiana had a chance to pull this off, or were you still, hey, there's a whole lot of football left to play?
With the Michael Penix thing, Matt, first, yeah, 100%. That was just on top of Michael Penix needing to 100% be better, because that was and I think he will. But Nathan, no, I wasn't feeling good, because I even said in our back channel chats that I'm like, Indiana needs to be up 2 scores. They need to be up 2 scores coming down to the end of the game for me to be okay. And this team is good enough to put it away being up 2 scores. I would not feel comfortable at all if it's even a 1-touchdown game, a 7-point game. I still won't feel comfortable, because they could tie it, go to overtime. And usually the Hoosiers and ranked opponents in overtime, even in Bloomington, do not bode well for Indiana. So they had to be up 2. So even though they ended up going up 20-14 right before the Penn State onslaught of just really taking advantage of the gas defense, I wasn't feeling comfortable.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, it was one of those things where when Indiana got the ball back with 4:55 to go, at their own 26, I was saying, hey, once again, can they move down the field and get 3? But once again, no. It was a 3-and-out. It was a second consecutive 3-and-out at this point in the game. And the Nittany Lions got the ball back, and then they hit you with the dagger ball. The touchdown that you thought was going to end things at this point, because Indiana had been flirting with disaster all game. They were able to force a few takeaways in the first half. They were able to force a turnover on downs on the previous drive. But here, Sean Clifford hits Jahan Dotson for the home run ball to give Penn State its first lead of the game. Matt, this was bad.
This is the one bad play I think the defense had all day. I'll forgive them for not tackling Clifford, because you're afraid to hit the quarterback, might get a penalty, might get some weird targeting call. I understand that. Like, that's forgivable. This play was a very well drawn out play for Penn State. The play design for this is really good. Clifford executes it perfectly. Jahan Dotson executes it perfectly. They take advantage of our 2 high safeties, and one of our safeties cheating over a little bit too much to cover what was a bit of an out route, and they hit the home run ball. But this play was happening. This play was sitting in the wings for a good 3 or 4 drives now for Penn State, because they had been, again, the last drive they had 6 plays, 3 minutes of possession. They punted before, they had 8 plays, 31 yards, 4 minutes of possession. Like at this point, IU has maybe had the ball for 15 minutes of a 60-minute game. The defense has been out there for forever. This one bad play was.
It was literally the one bad play.
One bad play was just waiting to happen. And
besides the Sean Clifford run for 35 yards, that was the longest play after this 60-yard was only, I think it was 15 or 16 yards as a reception, which is pretty typical for a receiver to get something like that.
Mm-hmm. And to dig in a little deeper, I noticed Kane Womack, who I thought, we talked about offensive play calling. I know the defensive play calling, the switches that Womack flipped were pretty on point all game. And I think Womack started to think, with the defense on the field so much, he used that intuition to say, hey, we got to blitz more. We got to get after Clifford more. We got to create our own pressure rather than give him 5 seconds to throw the football. And on that touchdown, Penn State's guard Mike Miranda just erased an Indiana blitzer who came up coming through the middle. I think it was a linebacker. I didn't catch the name or the number, but he just completely took him out. One of the most incredible blitz pickups I've ever seen. If you guys go back and watch that highlight.
It was Cam Jones did both Jones on both sides of the ball did not have a good game. Cam Jones was some of the sour points on the defense yesterday.
He had a big fourth down stop, but I just remember that that specific play, when you pick up the blitz like that, Clifford's going to have some open receivers downfield.
And you brought up Jones, right? We can bring up Caleb Jones for the turnover on down.
Oh, we're about to get there.
That's the next thing.
That's the next thing up. Because Nathan, go ahead and introduce this turnover on down.
Well, that's the thing, and remember, Indiana already had back-to-back 3-and-outs before the Penn State home run ball. This was even worse. Matt, take it away. Caleb Jones giving a back-to-back sacks to Shaka Tony. Nothing Penix could do.
He didn't even get a hand on Shaka Tony. Twice. It looked so bad. He was just standing still. Shaka just bull rushes him and gets past him twice in the clutch. It's like Penix can see it happening, and he looks like a deer in headlights. There's nothing he can do. There's this giant, massive mountain of a man, like basically swim moving at him through the air. There's nothing he can do. And because Caleb Jones is just sitting there staring at him run past him. And both times, Caleb Jones, you can see him so upset after. But like, I get that you're upset, but that's on you. Like, there's no one else.
The same move, the same exact thing 2 times in a row.
The same jump off the line, off the right side. And Penix can see it, but there's nothing he can do. He takes that 3-4 step drop, and boom, he's sacked. 6-yard loss to the first run. Okay, all right, 2nd and 16. Let's get it together. Let's get a short chunk play. Let's get it to 3rd and 8. We'll put a drive together. It's fine. Next play, same thing happens. 5-yard loss, and now it's 3rd and 21 at your own 14 with a receiving corps that can't get more than 3 yards separation to save their life. And Penix throws a ball, and I believe this is not the Hendershot play, right? This is not the touchdown that Hendershot drops.
No, right? that happened earlier.
That happened earlier. Yeah, we can mention that Hendershot drops a touchdown. Basically.
Yeah, that was one of those. Yeah,
clips. Penix hits him in the hands, right here, and it goes straight through his hands. But anyways, Penix tries to force a pass. It's incomplete. Then on 4th and 21, on 4th down, on your own 14, we have to go for it.
Right.
This is the game, right? Yeah. Incomplete. And at this point, I look over. I'm like, they just did it to me again. They've done it to me again. They've gotten my hopes up, and in classic IU fashion, I've seen the lead slowly dwindle away the entire second half. The inevitable outcome has happened. Penn State has come into Bloomington and won the game. This is it. It's over.
Yeah.
Was this the same drive, or was it the next one after Penn State scores? Was it that one? It might have been that drive where the same thing happened on like the first play where whoever was rushing at Caleb Jones, it wasn't because they took off Shaka Tony. They took him off the field, and another like cornerback came and rushed at him and got past him. Was it the next drive?
Yeah, that was the next drive. Real quick before we get into that, this is the play I thought was the second biggest of the game, or maybe the third biggest. So after the big sort of touchdowns and 2-point conversions in the end of the fourth quarter and overtime, allowing Devin Ford to walk in, because if we do the math, if there's a minute 47 to go at this point, Indiana has one timeout. That's why IU went for it on 4th and 21 at their own 14. If Penn State takes knees, if they kneel the football and kick a field goal, Indiana's going to get it back with something like 10 seconds to go.
Yeah,
with having to score a touchdown.
Not officially mathematically zero,
out, but close to zero. I mean, if it's not 0%, it's 0.001%. I think the ESPN win probability at this point had Penn State at 99.9%.
99.9 after it went over, yep.
Because all they had to do was take two knees, in all seriousness, take two knees, kick a field goal, and Indiana would have gotten the ball back with 8 seconds to go, needing a touchdown. But instead, Devin Ford scores, and Indiana made it explicitly clear in the post-game press conference that they were letting Ford score. If it was a pass, they would have defended it differently. But once Micah McFadden, his comments at post-game made it clear, and once they saw it was a run, they were going to let off a little bit because that's what's going to give you the best chance to win the game. So Ford scores. Indiana trails by 8, and then all of a sudden, the offense finds it, right? I mean, you can't script this stuff. They look like absolute trash for 3.9 quarters in this game. And all of a sudden, definitely got some help with some penalties. A new defensive player, Adisa Isaac, came in and grabbed Penix's face mask on a pass rush, gave the Hoosiers 15 free yards. Somehow, the receivers on this drive that contributed were Javon Swinton and Jacoby Hewitt, and you end up with Penix sneaking it in from a yard out. Noah, there are so many plays you can pick from on this drive that stands out. What are the ones you want to go into?
Well, I mean, Matt first talked at the beginning how this is kind of on Franklin with the coaching, because this is where you have to make it clear to your third string running back, you cannot walk into the end zone. That is exactly what they want you to do. That is literally the only way that they can come back and tie it. And lo and behold, Indiana came back and tied it because he went into the end zone. And they were so far away, like he could have stopped at the 2-yard line and they could have still tackled him in, but no one was anywhere near him that he was like, I am free. I can score a touchdown.
He had a first down. He had a first down. Instead, he scored.
And he was like, I'm free. And that's where the third string, he was just killing Indiana's defense to our dismay. And that was just where that third string, just not, the experience and the knowledge was like, shoot, I shouldn't have done that, even though I wanted to score a touchdown. And then a minute 38 left where Indiana is able to put together 7 plays for 75 yards. I think that's the most amount of yards that Indiana drove for a touchdown. I'm pretty sure.
Yep.
And I like the whole time I was even putting in the chest. I'm like, wait, where's Rashawn Williams? Where's Rashawn Williams? What are we hearing about this? Like Stewart, or like, why are we seeing Jacoby Hewitt and like Swinton, and who are these guys that are getting these balls? But hey, man, they really stepped up. Javon Swinton, basically he got both of his catches. He went 2 for 23. Jacoby Hewitt had that huge one at the very end to get the first down, and like, oh my goodness, those guys really stepped up to going into where Penix was able to sneak it in. And the whole game was, I think it was centered around Penix. The whole offensive game was centered around Penix, getting him back into the game. He is an efficient quarterback. He wasn't being efficient. So the connection between he and the receivers weren't there. They explicitly told him, you could tell 100%, do not run the ball. Do not go past the yard line. Do not run the ball. We do not want you to get injured in this. And that just threw his drive off a little bit after not playing for a while. And you could tell that it kind of started to get together when he was able to move around just a little bit. And I understand the coaching decision telling him not to run. I would have probably done the same thing. But after he started to get a little bit of his jelly legs, his sea legs back under him, he got back into the game after not playing for basically 365 days. Being able to run into the end zone kind of sparked him a little bit. And after Penn State, we're going to get to the overtime thing. You could tell that he was ready to try and score even on that second overtime drive.
Penix stepped up on this drive. He woke. Not stepped up. He woke up. Yeah. Is what happened. Penix,
he was going to lose the game for the Hoosiers, and then he won the game for the.
Yeah, Penix unleashed himself quite literally And just like Noah said, the key was his ability to move around in the pocket and use his legs, and be a mobile quarterback. At the end, we'll talk about the whole mobile display and the game-winning touchdown run. But his pass to Jacoby Hewitt, the laser beam just past the outreach hands of the defender right into Jacoby Hewitt's hand is a world-class NFL caliber throw. Like that stuff and catch that I see Carson Wentz and his receivers, I'm an Eagles fan, do every week. And he did that like 3 times in the drive. Javon Swinton, the pass to Watt Fillier was the same way. All of them were hard throws that he made. He had to do it in the clutch, did it. Then he runs it in for the touchdown to start off with. And then I want to talk about this 2-point conversion because again, we've seen IU in the past struggle with 2-point conversion plays. The play calling on the 2-point conversion was perfect, in my opinion. It was perfect because what they did was they played the numbers. The first play call was going to be what was a little like quad screen to toss out like a wide receiver screen to Stevie Scott out on the near sideline, on the home sideline. They were going to quick snap it. Packers was going to throw it across field to a waiting Stevie Scott who had 3 wide receivers in front of him. They were going to force one of the safeties or corners to make a play on a running back in the open with 3 yards to go. And you're going to take that bet every time that Stevie's going to win that number.
Dude. Yeah,
he's going to win that number matchup. Cool. Penn State calls a timeout. The next play call up, they do the same exact thing. They roll out to cover him, and now it's a 6-on-6 in the box with your mobile quarterback, and you just tell Penix, beat that one dude. I promise you our offensive line is going to give you the blocks that you need, and you run that in. That is a great play call, and I was railing. I tweeted, is it possible to fire an offensive coordinator after 1 game?
No.
I tweeted it. And that was the perfect play calling at the perfect time. And all credit goes to the offensive staff, Nick Sheridan and the offensive staff for that play call. And I think part of it also has to do with Tom Allen. On that last drive, there's shots of Tom Allen talking to Mike Hart, the running back coach. Like after every single play. And I think they were talking about, we're going for 2 on this drive. What's our 2-point conversion on this drive? How is it working? Let's get Stevie in space. Let's do this. And the play calling in that moment was clutch. It was a beautiful thing.
Yeah, a couple things I want to mention here. First of all, on the play before Penix scored a touchdown on the sneak, I thought Peyton Hendershot caught that pass in the end zone. That took it down to the half-yard line or whatever. For some reason, we talk about the officials. I'm going to talk about Fox Sports 1 here a little bit more. For some reason, there was no pylon angle right down the goal line when you're already at the 6-yard line.
Billion-dollar industry.
I can't imagine Fox Sports 1 is paying just a couple dollars for this Big Ten TV contract that they have. It's shocking to me they didn't have an angle right down the goal line here because, it wasn't a 70-yard touchdown. It was from the 6-yard line. That was the line of scrimmage on that pass from Penix to Hendershot. Whatever, Penix snuck it in. Penix on that drive, I don't know exactly what his numbers were before, but 5 for 6, 65 yards, rush TD, 2-point conversion as well, just on
all of his stats
on his legs. Yeah, and of course, hey, and the thing is, not all plays in football are created equal, right? And I know at the end of the day, we're going to go back and say, well, Michael Penix was 19 of 35. He didn't throw for even 200 yards on the day. He technically didn't have a rush yard in the official box score, which is strange. I don't know how that works.
I thought he was sacked for more. I thought it was still negative.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I misread that. You're right. Yeah. He was in the negative. So that's why I misread that. But still, as crazy as it sounds, he delivered when the game mattered the most. He and his lesser known receivers, as we talked about. Javon Swinton seems to be getting the love from the IU coaching staff there. True freshman Javon Swinton's getting the love there. So that seemed like was going to take us to overtime. NBD, no sweat. But then there was a botched squib kick. And when Jared Smoller knocked it into a wide receiver's hands at midfield instead of pummeling it down to the 5-yard line, that was a little concerning. And then, of course,
I think that was more. Before we get to the bad play calling, I don't think that was bad play calling. I think it was just a muffed kick to where, because you could tell Tom Allen's reaction, where a lot of people were like, "Oh, that's Tom Allen. Like, have they learned anything at all? Has Indiana learned anything at all?" I think it was just a bad and a missed kick. Yeah,
missed execution. I felt bad for Smoller too. There were too many shots of him on the sideline with his head in his hands, and as Jordan Stout, Penn State's backup kicker, knocked a 57-yarder in the air, slow motion. He started trotting. He started feeling himself.
Good.
That ball, and I think the camera angle was kind of funky on the TV screen because you couldn't see the bottom of the crossbar. You couldn't tell if it went in or not, and then you just have to look at the ref who said no, he missed it. And officially, we were into overtime. It was a 57.
Oh my gosh!
In God's divine intervention, you have to go look at the weather forecast from yesterday and how the wind was blowing.
The wind was blowing
against him, and he misses the field goal by half a yard, not even like a couple inches. So. If you don't believe in God's divine intervention as an IU fan, you do now. Because that was the game. I saw that and I was like, that's the most Indiana football way to lose this game.
I know. 57-yard field goal to a guy that only comes out there to kick kickoffs, and then relatively when you need a miracle, come out and kick a miracle, which he did before, by the way. He did kick the 57-yarder to win.
A poorly executed squib kick leading into that. Stout has to basically. Stout has to be their kicker going forward. I do want to also say though, subtle criticism of James Franklin here to add on to all the other ones so far today. They had 8 seconds left with a timeout from the Indiana 30-yard the Indiana 40-yard line. I thought they could have taken another shot, even a running play to see something happen there, but they didn't. Okay. We go to overtime. Sean Clifford on third down hits Parker Washington in the end zone. It was one of those broken coverages in the back of the end zone when it's a rollout scramble situation. Yada, yada.
Penn State can do it, and then no.
Because at that point in college OT, if you can hold them to a field goal, you're feeling pretty good about your chances because
you're feeling very good if you're holding them to the field goal because they might miss it too.
Blank.
Yeah.
Parker Washington really picked it up there in that OT. He is a freshman receiver. He's a freshman receiver in his own right for Penn State. He only had 2 catches. They both came in the top of that first overtime as Penn State took a 7-point lead. It's also not easy to get too many yards when Tywan Mullen is covering you for a good chunk of the game. So here we go. All right, let's crank up the heat, folks. We head into the overtime, the Indiana possession in overtime, and Penix here, I thought, did such a great job of sort of commanding the offense, and then it was Whop Phillier who got the big TD there on 3rd and goal from the 9-yard line. We were looking for Whop to make a big play, and he finally did right there, Noah.
It was. I mean, you got the Indiana side of it, 5 plays, obviously 25 yards, since that was where you have it. And you got a Michael Penix pass complete to Stevie Scott for 9 yards. That was a great play. Then you see Stevie Scott run for 6 yards. Great. Stevie Scott run for 2 yards. Still, you get into within 8 yards. You're looking really good. Then you got a pass complete to Stevie Scott. It was, again, another pass complete. He was still 2 for 2, even though it was a loss of 1 yard. And then you get to 3rd and goal where, hey, you've got 2 shots because you 100%, this is at least the one time, because some of the announcers were like, when there was 5 minutes left, they're like, this is the game, even though there was like 5 minutes left, just to add on to some of the weirdness with them. This was actually the time where they had to go for it too. So, you had 2 shots with 9 yards to go. And again, the same kind of idea of a play, basically a broken play, more or less, at the end of the regulation, where Penix was able to kind of run in, and the same thing with like the 2-point conversion. And then same thing, he was able to get the pass complete to Whop Phillier. Then you got the broken coverage on the 2-point conversion where he was able to run it around. And this is where the level of athleticism. And if Michael Penix didn't start to feel it with that last drive to score and tie the game, I don't think he would have had the confidence to basically win this in overtime for the Hoosiers, because this was prime time. Literally, it was at 8:00 at this point. Prime time Michael Penix being able to be just an athlete and a guy that was able to win this game for the Hoosiers almost 100% by himself, minus the Stevie Scott runs to get him closer. He was able to place the ball for Watt failure. Not perfect, but a lot better than the other throws himself, and then win the game himself by coming around the edge. And whether you like it or not, he still got into the end zone, regardless of what people might say for just controversial.
All right, so Matt, here's the deal, right? You're watching that 2-point conversion play. I want you to break it into 3 segments. What are your thoughts before the play happens? Would you have gone for 1 or would you have gone for 2? The second part is tell me what your thoughts were during the play as you see Penix take it to the pylon. And then third, tell me what you were thinking as they were reviewing it for what felt like 76 hours.
Oh yeah, this is such a complicated answer, but I'm just gonna go. I'm gonna start talking. First, go for 1. I think is the answer there for me. I know the defense has been playing well all day. Again, you maybe think that Penn State might have figured something out there at the end of the half, and the defense started to get tired. But they've been making plays all day, and it was a fluky missed coverage at the end to get Parker Washington over for a touchdown. Like I'd take my money and put it on the defense again. I don't blame him for going for 2. Okay. And by the way, we line up to go for 2. Yeah, we line up to go for 2. I think we're just burning Penn State's timeout so that he doesn't freeze our kicker. So we just put the kicker on. But no, I did not just go for 2 again. I'm like, okay, I guess this is the game. This is the game. This is the game. Okay, this is the game. We start the play.
Had enough.
We start the play. He sits back there. I'm like, oh God, what's happening? And he starts to roll out, and I go, oh, he's using his legs. Like this is good. This is good. He's using it. And then as the play develops, I'm like, oh my God, he has no space to get there. He has no space. There's nobody. So I'm like, okay, maybe he can flip Russell Wilson, flip the ball forward right as he gets to the line and towards the end zone. No one's open. There's 6 Nittany Lions standing around. I think one of them is Watt failure in the end zone, and I forget the other wide receiver's name. Or who was there, but I know Watt was in the end zone. Like there's no, he has to run this, and he extends the ball forward, and it's like in slow motion. I am just watching I'm watching the 30-point meltdown to Rutgers at home in 2015. I'm watching the doink, the missed field goal, the field goal that was good against Duke in the bowl game. I'm watching all of this pain.
Ohio State
overtime, losing against Michigan State last year in East Lansing after a great game. The Tennessee game. All these things are coming into my head at the same time. I just my heart has stopped beating at this point. I've become a zombie, and I see the turf turds, the little what instead. Because I use as a fake,
the beads, the little rubber beads. Yeah,
I see them come off the turf. And I think, he was this close. I'm like, he was this close. That's it. It's over. And then I see the ref in the corner of the end zone in the near sideline put both hands up. And I lose my mind because there's no way I thought that was going to be the call. I thought that he was out of bounds short. I thought the tip of the ball hit first. I thought there was no way he got there. I thought maybe his knee was out, his ankle was out, in live time. I was like, there's no way he just somehow
did you say about
over the ground.
Control? Did you mention that too? I wasn't sure if he was going to have control through the whole thing either.
Yes, the ball. He kept the ball in his hands. If the ball hits the pylon, you lose control of the ball. It's a fumble out of bounds. So at the same time, I'm like, oh my God. And if you want to go back and watch the replay of the last play, because I know we all want to. It's a great watch. But you go back and watch it and watch Watt Fillier's reaction to the play in the end zone. Because he doesn't believe that Penix scored. Because Penix extends the goal line, and Watt's reaction is this. Watt's reaction is both hands on his head, like, oh my God, we just lost this game at the last second because he went out of bounds. Watt doesn't actually think he got in, and then Watt turns and sees the linesman give the touchdown. and loses his mind because he doesn't actually believe that he just saw Penix make the play that he did. It is one of the best winning plays I've ever seen in a football game that Penix made. We are blessed to have seen that happen. It is unreal that it happened. And then the 5-minute review where I'm sitting there clenched. Is the best thing that I can describe. My entire body has become a raisin of stress and just pure hatred for review at this point. And I'm sitting there
because IU hadn't gotten a review call for them at this point.
The entire game, I'm screaming at the TV, we are the home team. We're supposed to get calls. The entire game, we don't get anything. And finally, we get the luck of the fact that there's no evidence that Fox didn't plan ahead and get a goal line camera that on the line. Who knows what the outcome would have been if that was there? And
they had it. They had it for this one. They had like 3 different goal line looks for this.
Yeah, they did it wrong, but they didn't have it straight down the line. They didn't have it down the pylon.
Oh, right. It's true.
They didn't have that for this game, and we are so lucky that we didn't get that. And Penix, I build him a statue. When he's going to be done here, he's going to be one of the best quarterbacks to ever come through Indiana. You know, we have some people in the chat. Forrest is talking about Ramsey, and we love Ramsey on this program. We're big fans of Peyton Ramsey.
He crushed it yesterday.
What he did at Northwestern yesterday, they crushed Maryland. He made Tua's brother look like Tua's stepbrother. Like it was bad. But Penix is here for this reason and this reason only. When you look at the NFL, make an NFL comparison, you look at the Chiefs and a game manager like Alex Smith, who was on the Chiefs, right? There's a reason why he was benched for somebody like Patrick Mahomes. And I'm not comparing Michael Penix to Patrick Mahomes at all. That's unfair to
right.
It's unfair to Patrick Mahomes. No, it's unfair. It's unfair
to everyone.
It's unfair to Penix. But there's a difference between a game manager and a game changer. And Penix is a game changer. He makes game-changing plays, and you live with him throwing a stupid interception over the middle to a pass that he shouldn't have. You live with him not going, like, I think he was like 8 for like 19 at one point or 8 for like 22. Like
it was ugly.
You live with the incompletions for plays like this that win you games that Ramsey would not have been able to make. Ramsey doesn't make that play because Ramsey is slower and smaller than Penix. And Penix had the exact speed, the exact awareness, the exact length of his fingertips to get the ball across the line there. That's a play that only Penix can make.
Yeah, Noah, same question to you. I mean, we've watched so many football games in over the years here, but that ending was just unlike anyone I've ever seen.
I mean, I don't want to take too much of everyone's time just because I know this is the longest podcast that we have probably ever had, but at least it's the first one.
It's fitting the moment.
It's deserving.
Definitely so. But I mean, it definitely for IU, I mean, it rivals definitely in football. There's no comparison to the ending because obviously the endings usually never go the Hoosier way, but it can rival even for football fans. If you're a fan of both football and basketball, it can rival something like the Watt shot. At the end for that. And again, it's not the same type of thing, but it could rival if you're an avid football fan, it can rival something like that. It's the same kind of like, I was watching the Michigan-Minnesota game, and you think of a couple years ago where the Michigan just muffed that punt at the very end where Michigan State is able to win. You think of those kind of ends to games. And you also think of how close Indiana has been to some of these high-profile teams where the ESPN headline is like Ohio State almost loses or Michigan State almost loses. It's there for like a fraction of a second because Indiana was close. This time, Indiana has made the headlines, and they stayed on the headlines longer than they ever have. And they go into, we were talking about this today, in just about an hour and a half, 2:00 p.m. Eastern. The official rankings are going to come out, and Indiana 100% is going to be ranked for football. We've seen people put out their rankings already because that's how it is. You've got X amount of voters putting in their rankings. Depending on how high you are to the top is how many votes you get. et cetera, et cetera. There have already been people that have put multiple people putting Indiana in the top 10 and top 15, which means Indiana is going to be in the top 25. We'll have to see where, but this is the kind of thing that, remember last year, Indiana teetered on the top 25, like they got in one, but they didn't get in the other. And it was like, they got it and it was really cool at the time, but it wasn't like it wasn't definite. It wasn't 100%. Indiana's 100% a top 25 team. They're 100% going to be in the top 25 right now. And it's just kind of everything culminating all at once. And Indiana's got you can't look past this Rutgers team much anymore. No. It's not a 100% free for all gimme like it has been the last 2 years. But Indiana's looking really poised to start the year 2-0 when this was a game that it's easy to say, yeah, Indiana's going to beat Penn State, right? In preview shows. And then when in your heart of hearts, you're like, I don't know if they're going to do it because they haven't done it yet. And they did it. They were able to get that monkey off their back. Hopefully they can continue that. They can beat Ohio State or hopefully more like Michigan to kind of get that next tier of Indiana hasn't beat this opponent in X amount of years. They can get that tier off their back and just continue hopefully a very, very successful year.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it does come back to that LEO mindset that Tom Allen's brought in to this program because they could have given up on that game, especially after Dotson scores that 60-yard touchdown with 3 minutes to go. They could have given up, but all Tom Allen talked about and all Michael Penix talked about after the game were, hey, we stuck with it, we stayed positive, we hung in there, we fought for each other. And that's what happens. Great
post-game speeches if you've seen on the Twitters and videos and stuff.
Oh, so good. Both sort of the raw video in the locker room and then the press conferences too were just exceptional. It's funny, Buck Sewell on the IU radio broadcast, even Don Fisher when he was calling the play-by-play, they both did not think Penix got in watching it live, but when he started slowing it down. To me, it was right there. Maybe not as crazy as that Michigan muff punt to lose to Michigan State, but maybe that one level lower where you just go, wow. I've never seen a dive that uncomfortable to the pylon, and the sort of the nose of the ball coming within the front tip of the pylon, and if like the pylon's maybe an inch off the goal line, does the ball cross the tip of the goal line?
If the ref forgot to reset it correctly or something,
And again, like I said earlier, a lot of it comes down to just the call on the field. And fortunately for Indiana, the big break there was that the ref on the field called a touchdown, so the call was able to stand. And Indiana's going to be 1-0, and it looks like they're going to be not only in the top. It looks like they're not only going to be in the top 25, but they could be in the top 15. And I don't expect a hangover here next week, but that stuff. That Matt and I will talk about on our podcast Tuesday night. Don't miss it. Don't miss it, folks. It's going to be fun. But that about wraps it up for our 165th episode of the Hoosier Sound. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your support. Thank you to our live audience. It was a fun chat to have with all of you today. To hear more fantastic episodes like the one you heard here, make sure to follow Indiana HQ on Twitter so you don't miss any in the future. You can also go to indianahq.com to find it all in one place. Lastly, if you enjoy our show, leave us a review, tell a friend, share our links. Your support really helps us grow this podcast and reach more passionate IU fans such as yourself. But as always, thank you for listening, Hoosiers.